NBA Domination begins, Logan unlocks full-level Aomine Daiki skills. Episode 111. At this thought, Kevin Durant's heart kept beating drums. That year, LeBron James made the decision 1.0 to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers and join the Miami Heat to hold Dwayne Wade's thigh. As a result, their first season did not win the championship as desired, but was a bunch of old fritters from the Dallas Mavericks, playing with bags, and the championship was gone. Even if the criticism is good, some media are simply malicious mockery, saying that after LeBron James hugged Dwayne Wade's thigh, he directly restricted the thigh Dwayne Wade's play, and he did not rub to the championship, and he was a negative actor. Stephen Curry seemed to see through Kevin Durant's thoughts, patted him on the shoulder and said, "Rest assured, as long as you limit Logan, the rest of the Los Angeles Lakers players will not be able to hit at all." Kevin Durant nodded. Stephen Curry's comment is very fair. The Los Angeles Lakers are the most powerful is Logan. In addition to Logan, the rest from the coach to the player is simply a decoration. After all, this lineup is not at all to win the championship. It was originally formed to win the championship, and the salary is only a little higher than the poor small line. Logan, even if he is a god, cannot be on the field and do a dozen five. This is the NBA, not the summer league where the players are relatively weak. Well, even if Logan can play a 5 on the offensive end, and he can defend 5 on the defensive end, this is obviously impossible. Even if he runs faster than Bolt, he can't defend the whole field in an instant. Then, Kevin Durant asked, should we do some defensive practice specifically for Logan? After all, we're going to play against Logan soon. The next 3 games of the Los Angeles Lakers are home to the Cleveland Cavaliers, home to the San Antonio Spurs, and home to the Golden State Warriors. If the Los Angeles Lakers win the first 2 games, it will be a 22-game winning streak, and the game against the Warriors will be the 23rd. The later schedule is very favorable for the Los Angeles Lakers to create a winning streak. If the Los Angeles Lakers beat the Golden State Warriors, they will all be behind some weak teams such as the Philadelphia 76ers and the Memphis Grizzlies, easily breaking the Golden State Warriors' record of 24 consecutive wins last season. Therefore, they must snipe the Los Angeles Lakers at the home of the Los Angeles Lakers to prevent their opponents from breaking their own records. Kevin Durant almost thought he had misheard, saying, "What we just did, obviously defensive practice for 3-pointers, would Logan shoot a 3-pointer? Stephen Curry stuck out his tongue, sighed, and said, "When did you have it?" He didn't have the illusion of shooting 3 points. At the moment, in the Los Angeles Lakers Staples Arena, Angelo Russell and Ingram are panting. They had done their best to defend Logan, but there was no way to defend it, and it took a lot of physical strength. Angelo Russell found that whatever way he defended Logan, it was wrong. When Angelo Russell and Ingram blocked the front side by side, Logan began a series of wide crosses, using his speed to shake off one of them and then shoot straight 3-pointers. Whether it's Angelo Russell or Ingram, they can't match Logan in terms of speed. Logan is so fast that he can take 2 consecutive steps sideways to lead Angelo Russell by half a position. At this absolute speed, trying to keep up with Logan's transverse movement is a pipe dream. In fact, in ordinary games, when other teams defend Logan sideways, they basically call on players in other positions to make up for it, and they do not expect to be able to keep up. If Angelo Russell and Ingram had predicted that Logan was going to move sideways and stand still, Logan would break through the gap between them. The cooperation between these 2 people is not tacit enough, and there will always be more or less gaps in the middle. Logan didn't ask to break through, his purpose was just to find a shot in the gap between the 2. After all, when 2 people defend head-on, they rarely jump up to defend, and more mainly interfere. Interference can only interfere with those ordinary basketball players. As long as you can shoot, Shintaro Midorima's 3-pointer, that is bound to score. Wardang looked at Angelo Russell and Ingram and smiled and said, "You are not tired. Do you want to take a break?" "I am not tired." Angelo Russell and Ingram couldn't help but scold in their hearts. Wardang was standing and talking without waist pain. Wardang is very relaxed, anyway, he is only responsible for the defense around the back, without spending any physical energy. Angelo Russell looked at Ingram and said, "That's not the way to go." England smiled and said, "Actually, I have a good way to definitely guard against the boss." Angelo Russell coughed and said, "Your solution will not be to pull one more person up and form a 3-person bag defense to deal with the boss." Ingram nodded and said, "Yeah, you're such a genius, otherwise let's try the 3-man clip defense." Angelo Russell wants to cry without tears, "Aren't you already a 3-person clip defense? The last person is 4. Logan shrugged his shoulders and said it didn't matter. Even if this group of teammates comes in many people, with Logan's ability, it is easy to deal with. However, Angelo Russell seems to have no other better way to increase the intensity of the defense, by adding heads. So big forward Larry Nance was also pulled up, and he was responsible for encircling Logan's front, while Angelo Russell and Ingram were on his left and right flanks, responsible for mobile defense. Lourdes was still leisurely behind him, ready to make up for it. Larry Nance was also very positive. His large body can have a lot of impact on Logan's shooting. At this point, it was finally impossible to see through the storm, Angelo Russell thought. But at this time, Logan faced Larry Nance Jr., dribbled twice, and suddenly jumped straight to shoot. Larry Nance was not slow and quickly jumped to the highest point. However, when he jumped to the highest point, he suddenly found that Logan had no ball in his hand and but just made a fake shooting action. Episode 112, Elimination. Disappearing shots. Larry Nance Jr. couldn't help but yell, "Old boss, what magic did you use?" In fact, Larry Nance Jr. has just performed very well. Logan and Larry Nance Jr. jumped to the highest point at the same time, and Larry Nance Jr. felt that for the first time in his life, he was in such good shape that he could jump to the highest point like Logan, who is famous for his bouncing. But Logan only made the shooting action, and there was no ball in his hand. Larry Nance Jr. knew one thing without asking, and that was that the vanishing ball, no doubt had been secretly thrown out by Logan without knowing when, and it had been thrown in. At this time, the sound of the water splashing on the ground had just sounded, and sure enough, Logan had already thrown the ball out before he jumped. Logan's expression seemed to be even more surprised than Larry Nance Jr., and he was surprised and said, "You actually know the disappearing shot, and you also watch Kuroko's basketball." You know, Kuroko's basketball is a household name in Japan or Dragon Country. Many fans are scolding this as a murderous basketball, nonsense, are some fantasy novel skills, not basketball works at all, and then while watching the beauty, but also in reality with various means to restore Kuroko's basketball skills, indicating that this is all scientific. For example, what seems impossible to shoot the yang yen, irregular shot and so on, have been imitated by people alive. As for other Eye of the Emperor, disappearing dribble and the like, just find a few extras to cooperate. As for what whirlwind hammer is even simpler, isn't it to rotate a 360-degree dunk? You change LeBron James directly rotate a 360-degree dunk, who can stop it? The only thing that can't be imitated may be the meteor dunk of Vulcan's big self, because the dunk point of the meteor dunk has almost reached the three-point line. To be honest, since any double shot in the football player can be imitated, Kuroko's ability in basketball is more realistic, and it is not surprising that it is imitated. A few days ago, in his own history line, Logan saw the tennis star Azarenka imitating the stunt of Kakumaru's in The Prince of Tennis, walking a tightrope, directly subverting Logan's three views. He had always thought that walking a tightrope was a lie, but he didn't expect that even this thing was real. Therefore, at this moment, with the blessing of the ability system of Qingfeng Daihui, Logan is also blatant, imitating the unique skill of Tetsuya Kuroko in the manga, The Disappearing Shot, but he did not expect that Larry Nance Jr. could actually know this. Larry Nance Jr. laughed a few times, and of course he was embarrassed to admit that he was an otaku who read comics. He's an otaku who reads comics. Angelo Russell ruthlessly debunked Larry Nance Jr. Every time I ask him to go to a nightclub, he doesn't go. Larry Nance Jr. listened, and while his eyes widened like brass bells, the green tendons on his forehead protruded, he said, "How do you defile people's innocence out of thin air?" I also go to nightclubs a lot. Angelo Russell burst out laughing. "You're all nightclubs from social media." Larry Nance Jr. said, "I don't bother with you." And he said to Logan adoringly, "Boss, how did you get that disappearing shot you just made?" Logan smiled. "In fact, the principle is very simple, really worthless. And this disappearing shot is not Logan's original, he just copied the skills of others." On the vibrato in Logan's historical line, someone once used realistic means to restore most of the skills of Aomine Daiki and Kuroko Tetsuya, and all the skills of the 5 people in the Miracle Age were almost restored. Among them, Kuroko Tetsuya's seemingly impossible to disappear shot has also been completely restored. That is, before the complete shooting action is completed, the basketball player who controls the ball directly throws the ball from the low hand. In tennis, the average player chooses to throw the ball to the highest point before hitting the tee. But there are also a few people who play tricks and immediately after throwing the ball with a low hand, hitting the opponent by surprise. The same is true of the disappearing shot. In fact, Logan directly threw the ball out at the same time as he raised his hand, and the rest of the time he just made the shooting action. In fact, there was no basketball in his hand. However, this shot is very difficult and definitely not as simple as it is said. Strictly speaking, this kind of shooting is actually the same as the principle of low-handed basketing. But now that Logan is 2 steps away from the 3-point line, think for yourself, shooting with a low-handed layup posture 2 steps away from the 3-point line, and you have to ask for a shot. Don't say that there are defenders in front of you. Even if there is no defender, I let you try 100 times in the empty seat, and you may not shoot. Because shooting from a low hand at a very long distance, the trajectory of the shot that is required to be thrown is very strange, and if you throw it 100 times, you may not be able to see such a trajectory. Haha. Logan touched Larry Nance Jr.'s head and said, "This ball, it's just a show. It's useless in a serious game. You don't have to take this ball to heart." Logan is actually telling the big truth. If it is in a more serious regular game, the defense plus is a flexible defender, the ball is easy to be cut off by the other side, so Logan only uses this special technique when the opponent is a big forward like Larry Nance Jr. If the opponent is a top defensive player like LeBron James or Chris Paul, and the footwork is flexible, this skill is of little use, so Logan is just used to show one. Of course, Logan also does not know whether the system will give Kuroko Tetsuya disappearing shot in the future, whether this is the case, which is only imitated by himself at the moment. Because after all, Tetsuya Kuriko's stealth ability in the system has not yet been unlocked, and he can't check the true face of this ability. However, the effect of this shot also shocked Larry Nance Jr. Angelo Russell, on the other hand, felt really don't know how to play, and now that 3 people are wrapped up in defense, Logan can still throw this kind of invisible ball. Is it to get closer to Larry Nance Jr.? But if it were closer, Logan's wide range of horizontal movements like lightning would be even more defenseless. Logan smiled and said, "You have to be more serious about defense, you can't let this kind of juggling shot, you can shoot, otherwise you are worse than Harlem basketball team." Episode 113. This sentence, Logan has actually said more seriously. The Harlem basketball team is a well-known basketball team in the United States known for its performances, and occasionally joined by retired NBA professionals. The tricks they play in the game seem to be very shocking, and every dunk is earth-shattering, such as 5 consecutive missed boards and then received a slam dunk and so on. But this can only fool beginners, and professional NBA athletes are scornful, because they can do this kind of action without defense. This is Logan's purpose. He wants to stimulate these friends, a deeper layer of defensive ability, to experience the effect of Midorima Shintaro three-pointer. Angelo Russell can only beckon to his companions, defend, and defend a little harder. They put the defensive formation in a more compact way to avoid Logan using it as a show trick to crush themselves. Sure enough, as Angelo Russell thought, there was no way to prevent Logan's wide sideways three-pointer from stopping. Logan is also cool, after all, for the first time in his life, he is so comfortable to shoot a three-pointer, how to shoot how close, really experienced the feeling of Shintaro Midorima in the manga. You know, in the manga special extra, the Age of Miracles 5-person combination, plus Tetsuya Kuriko and Vulcan Day, against the street performance basketball team from the United States, similar to the Harlem basketball team, the Age of Miracles is nearly 20 points behind at the beginning. At that time, it was by relying on Midorima's shocking three-pointers, as well as Ryota's full-court three-pointer who copied Midorima Shintaro's ability, and kept chasing points to avoid failure. Even some fans even ran to the editorial office to complain, saying that this is a plot of copying the slam dunk master, and in the battle with Sano, relying on Mitsui Sho's three-pointer to forcibly chase points. It can be seen that Shintaro Midorima is the only person in the Age of Miracles who can't open the zone, and his ability is surprisingly powerful. Larry Nance Jr. and Ingram did their best, but they couldn't defend against Logan. In Logan's eyes, this is very normal. You know, even though Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram are all very talented, they are only rookies in the past 2 years, and they are not known for defense. If the pair is in front of LeBron James and Kobe Bryant in the joint defense, Logan may also have to consider the shooting posture to avoid being blocked and steals by these 2 people. Deal with the joint defense of these rookies? Logan was casually throwing, casually entering, just listening to the brush, the sound of water splashing everywhere. No matter how tight the defense of a few rookies, that is what they think is good. In Logan's eyes, the defense of these people is full of loopholes. Roar Dang was also trying to help, sneaking up on Logan's ball while Logan was focusing on a couple of rookies. Logan's vision is super broad, not inferior to the league's best dynamic vision. LeBron James, how can Roar Dunn succeed? With a random dribble, Roar Dunn's ball fell through. Unconsciously, Logan's shooting distance was further behind, starting at 2 steps near the three-point line, then slowly becoming 3, 4 steps, and even retreating to near the midline. After a while, Angelo Russell was the first to react and said, "We're going to take a break and discuss tactics." Having said that, and without Logan's permission, Angelo Russell pulled Ingram and Larry Nance and Roar Dang to the sidelines. They are indeed sweating like pulp, panting like cattle, and need to take a break. Instead, Logan was calm and relaxed, and there was nothing wrong with it. "Okay." Logan estimated the time and said, "I can only give you 30 seconds of rest." "No problem." Angelo Russell said breathlessly, 30 seconds is enough. Then Angelo Russell and Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. and Roar Deng sat on the sidelines and watched Logan not only not rest, but also shoot his own three-pointers there and shoot 100% from the field. My mother, is this human? Roar Deng smirked and said, I have never seen such an athlete in my career for so many years, and Michael Jordan is not as good as him. You know, Roar Dunn was one of the 5 Bulls of the year, and he was really the only man on the court who had played Michael Jordan. Even though he played Michael Jordan, who returned to the Washington Wizards in the final year of his career, that sentence still carries some weight. Roar Deng had never seen such a man, and young men like Angelo Russell and Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. were even less likely to have met. The boss didn't sweat at all. Larry Nance Jr. noticed Logan's abnormality. In the face of such a fierce defense of the 4 of them, Logan did not even sweat at the moment. Obviously that Andrew Wiggins, from the Timberwolves. Angelo Russell said, it's also the case that you never sweat when you play, don't make a fuss. Ingram said, you use the boss and Andrew Wiggins, if Andrew Wiggins encounters such defensive intensity, he will see if he cannot sweat. Cannot sweat, I have your surname Angelo. Angelo Russell was silent, yes, Andrew Wiggins' lazy style of play, it is true that he does not sweat, but Logan is currently forcing a 4, and he is still shooting at such a long distance. As we all know, the closer you get to the basket, the higher the shooting rate and the more energy saving you are when shooting. You let Andrew Wiggins come, even if no one defends, let him shoot this kind of ultra-long three-pointer, it is estimated that he is tired and sweaty. Moreover, even Andrew Wiggins and them are the difference between heaven and earth. Andrew Wiggins was a big year of draft picks, and as soon as he debuted, he was compared to LeBron James, and was hailed as the top talent most likely to take over the mantle of LeBron James. There is no man of the same class as Andrew Wiggins, and there is not a single man who is not a top genius. Zach LaVine, for example, later became the backbone of the Chicago Bulls in Rogan's history line. The great Embiid, not to mention, is hailed as the only center in the league who can still have traditional center skills and adapt to the new era of play. Jokic, the teacher of the covenant, took the Denver Nuggets from a first-class signing-level team directly to the top 3 teams in the West. With 2 top talents in existence, Andrew Wiggins is still firmly in the top 3 in the 2014 draft rearrangement. Episode 114, What a concept it is to be able to occupy the top 3 in the case of the 2014 draft rearrangement. To know that Andrew Wiggins is simply a representative of profligate talent, everyone knows, he has always been lazy in playing, never sweating, and then Andrew Wiggins can still average 20+ per game. Many talented players can't get an average of 20+ per game in their desperate efforts. If Andrew Wiggins worked a little harder, everyone thought that an average of 27 or 28 per game would not be a problem at all. After all, when he entered the league, his template was LeBron James, the league, and the number 1 small forward in history. Generally speaking, the draft rearrangement is more about personal honor and strength, rather than potential. Emperor Embiid, n-times Eastern Conference All-Star starting center, if it were not for the face-paralyzed Leonard to grab 7 kills, Embiid cannot do well at this moment. There is already a championship ring in hand, Philadelphia 76ers, every year is the big hit to win the championship. About the teacher Jokic, the only organizational center in the league, taking a triple-double is like probing for things. The Western Conference All-Star starting center, once played with the Los Angeles Lakers in Logan's history line, is incomprehensible. If it were not for the thick eyebrow brother Anthony Davis in the last 2 seconds, the Western Conference champion deer killed whose hand is still unknown. These 2 people, whether they are individual honors or collective honors, are leveraged, and there is no doubt that the top 2 in the front row of the draft is the top 2. Andrew Wiggins has nothing, best team, no, best defensive team, no, not even an all-star, the team's record is also miserable, it went into a playoffs, or Jimmy Butler brought it. You know, Jimmy Butler can reach the finals with a bunch of old and sick people, and with Andrew Wiggins, he was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. With such honor, with the potential that he is actually not small, but it is possible to cash in, Andrew Wiggins, steadily re-ranking the draft is still in the top 3. It can be seen that this is a powerful genius. Eye-catcher. Angelo Russell said to Ingram, can you compare with Andrew Wiggins? Ingram shook his head, and LeBron James as a template genius ratio? Of course he didn't think he could. Angelo Russell laughed to himself, I can't either. You know, in Wang Yan's historical line, these 2 people have surpassed Andrew Wiggins in collective honor and personal honor. Angelo Russell brought the New Jersey Nets from a team that couldn't get in the playoffs to 5th in the East and was named to the All-Star team himself. Ingram grew into a big boss in New Orleans and made it to the Western Conference All-Star team himself. Andrew Wiggins. Not a single All-Star. It is these 2 people who still feel that their abilities are far inferior to Andrew Wiggins, who squanders their talents in this kind of, which shows how terrible each other's talents are. If Wiggins is a genius, Ingram said, then his template, LeBron James, is the top genius of 1,000 years. He looked at Logan, who was still shooting on the basketball court, and sighed, so what is our boss? They're just geniuses. Angelo Russell said lightly, our boss is not human at all. Yes, only the words that are not human can describe the current Logan. Not only is he far above Andrew Wiggins, but he is also far above the league's all-time small forward, LeBron James. If it's Andrew Wiggins on the pitch, Angelo Russell and Ingram are wondering when they'll be able to catch up with him in the future. If it's LeBron James on the pitch, Angelo Russell and Ingram are wondering when they'll be able to look up to each other in the future. But it was Logan shooting on the court, and Angelo Russell and Ingram thought that it was really a great fortune to be able to witness such a person shooting in this era. After all, Lourden was older, and he immediately noticed a problem. Have you noticed that the boss is deliberately leading us farther away from the three-point line? Roared Dang, still experienced. While the young people were madly worshipping Logan, Roared Dang found some problems. Their defensive area is getting farther and farther from the three-point line. This, too, was entirely intentional on the part of Rogan. After all, the farther a three-pointer is from the three-point line, the easier it is to defend, and if you can choose the defensive zone, no one will choose to defend closer to the three-point line. So he deliberately led the lines of Angelo Russell, Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. away from the three-point line, and the other side naturally followed Logan outside. It's a normal player who would have a reaction. After all, when the other party is far away from the three-point line, you don't follow up to defend, but let the other side shoot, then you are absolutely a fool in the eyes of the league scouts. Or you surround the opponent, don't let him shoot super long three-pointers, let him go as far as possible to the inside line, then in the eyes of the league scouts, you are still a fool like a being. Logan was certainly not masochistic, he was enjoying the thrill of shooting from a great distance. With 2 shots from beyond the three-point line, Logan was convinced that even in the face of a 4-man defense, he had no problem at all. Of course, these 4 people are limited to these few rookies, and if they are replaced by the 4-man defense of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Chris Paul and Klay Thompson, Logan is not so big, dare to say that he is 100% successful. Then Logan quietly steered the defenders all 2.5 steps beyond the three-point line and began to try to shoot. He found that shooting in this range, it was not a problem at all, and the feel of the shot was the same as the 2-step distance. After shooting a few consecutive shots, Logan decided that the next step was to try 3 steps away. Well, there didn't seem to be any problems either. Then Logan retreated to a distance of 3.5 steps, and something strange happened, and the shooting feel at this distance and the distance of 3 steps was almost the same. And this distance is no longer a long-range three-pointer, but a super long-range three-pointer. At this point, Logan somewhat understood some of the strange remarks of Stephen Curry, the league's first three-pointer. Stephen Curry once said in public, "When I shoot a three-pointer, what I care about is not how far I am from the three-point line, but whether the ball can hit, after all, the whole half, it is my shooting range." Episode 115. If it's the present before Rogan's crossing, it sounds like Stephen Curry's words don't seem to be great. After all, it is now the era of the death of the 5 small play style of play swept the league. Even the big center must come out to open up the space to shoot three-pointers, not the big center of the three-pointer. Even if you are the league rebounding king Chuangshan Drummond, there is no food. There is also a more extreme magic ball theory play such as the Houston Rockets. The entire team is under 2 meters tall, almost completely abandoned the rebounding and three-point eating style, and can actually rank at the top of the West. So now the league's history of the first three-point king, the only all-vote MVP in history, 2-time MVP Stephen Curry, has this capital to speak. However, Stephen Curry at that time had not yet won the Warriors' last 2 championships, and did not have 3 championship rings in hand. Moreover, the Death 5 style of play has also just emerged, and has not become the object of imitation by the whole league. At that time, the league was very focused on centers and big centers, and Warcraft Dwight Howard was still very valuable. As soon as these words came out, many people in the league were scolding, saying that Stephen Curry was arrogant and did not know that the sky was high, and his nickname of elementary school was also derived from this. Everyone in the NBA recognizes that those who get the basket get the world, and the defenders get the world. Especially in the playoffs, compared with the greatly reduced defensive power, the iron-blooded defense of each team is the basic basis for winning the championship. As for being able to win the championship by relying on three-pointers, for everyone, it is a fantasy. You must know that the basketball god Jordan, the career three-point shooting rate, is only more than 30%. Even the first time Stephen Curry led the Golden State Warriors to the championship, experts only thought the three-point shot was only part of the success of the Golden State Warriors. After all, the Golden State Warriors ranked first in the league in defensive efficiency at the time. And their offensive efficiency is only the fourth in the league, and the first offensive efficiency is actually the San Antonio Spurs. And the second season, the Golden State Warriors' defensive efficiency retreated to only 14th place in the middle of the league, but the offense sublimated to the first place in the league, and also created a 73-win record that broke the Chicago Bulls' year's dusty record, but it was reduced to the background board of the championship Cleveland Cavaliers. Experts are more certain of their own judgment. The defender wins the world. Relying on three-point offense is not reliable. Moreover, what is called the whole half is your shooting range, which is too exaggerated, which is completely against the common sense of the NBA. But, as it is, Stephen Curry doesn't seem to be shooting as high as he is on the far end of the line, closer to the three-point line. Someone once counted Stephen Curry's shooting rate at the peak of Rogan's history line, as high as 50% outside the three-point line, and within the three-point line, it was only less than 50%. In ultra-long-range three-pointers beyond the three-point line, Stephen Curry's shooting percentage is actually 56%, far beyond the average level of the league, and higher than some centers shooting from the basket. Now, Logan has the ability of Shintaro Midorima, who is clearly above Stephen Curry, and you can understand Stephen Curry's feelings when looking down from above. Stephen Curry's words are indeed not forced, but a manifestation of super prejudgment. In the manga, Shintaro Midorima once confidently said, "I will not throw it away." In fact, Shintaro Midorima also threw a three-pointer, which was forced by Shintaro Midorima to force a shot under the strong cover of Vulcan's big self. However, it was one of the two pigs' feet, the Vulcan Great Self, and the only time it was thrown away was under the cover of one of the two pigs' feet, which was not shameful at all. Some people have doubts. Shintaro Midorima, who can shoot three-pointers anywhere in the field, is this kind of player really a type of player who can defend? Then the whole team, as long as they tried to give every ball to Midorima Shintaro to shoot. Well, this person must not have seriously watched the manga Kuroko's Basketball. In the game, not all the balls received by the Green Arrow will shoot three-pointers. Instead, all the three-pointers thrown by Shintaro Midorima are bound to hit, but the author does not draw the scene where Shintaro Midorima holds the ball and does not shoot three-pointers. This shows that Shintaro Midorima's ability is not able to shoot a three-pointer anywhere in the field. Instead, as Shintaro Midorima said, "My shooting range is the whole court." This means that no matter what field it is, as long as Shintaro Midorima feels that he can shoot, he will be able to shoot immediately. Therefore, in addition to the stable three-point shooting rate and super range, Midorima's ability also has a super invincible intuition, which is where Midorima Shintaro is really strong. He can tell if the ball can be shot, not only for himself, but also for the enemy, and in the manga, although there is no written description, there is no less drawing of the timely card slot of Midorima and the scene of receiving the opponent's rebound. In Rogan's mind, Shimotaro Green Arrow was very strong, even though he was not as domineering as the other four in the Age of Miracles, and he was easily remembered. At the same time, Shintaro Midorima has two other modes in addition to his usual three-point shooting ability. The first, if there is a super long CD time, Green Arrow Shintaro can cultivate the feeling anywhere in the field and shoot a three-pointer. Of course, due to the long CD time, this skill of Shintaro Midorima has been destroyed by the Vulcan Daigo with super bouncing power, and it has been destroyed by the American team in the extra. The second kind, under the premise that Midorima Shintaro forcibly stimulates his own ability, Midorima Shintaro can directly receive the pass of his teammate regardless of time and place. Of course, this state is the same as the zone of Aomine Daiki, and it cannot be maintained for too long. Logan can feel that Stephen Curry, although not as far as Shintaro Midorima, but speaking of intuition, Stephen Curry is also a player of the type of Shintaro Midorima. Stephen Curry knows if he has a 50% chance of hitting a three-pointer at this time and place. However, the game is based on hard power. Good ball feeling does not represent everything. Height and technology is your capital across the court. Of course, Stephen Curry can't shoot three-pointers as often as Shintaro Midorima. Most of the time, Stephen Curry's physical strength and height disadvantages are not enough to support Stephen Curry's shooting anywhere in the halftime, so he doesn't often shoot anywhere in the halftime. But, Logan can proudly say that he's not the same as Stephen Curry. Episode 116, Logan and Stephen Curry are not the same, and that's because Shintaro Midori and Stephen Curry are not the same. In the manga, Shintaro Midorima is a strong man who is more than 2 meters tall and has super strength. Many people don't realize that in the training hall of the Age of Miracles, Shintaro Midorima has the longest training time. This is not because of how much Shintaro Midorima loves basketball and how hard he works, but because his physical strength can support him to train infinitely. As Shintaro Midorima famously said, "I know my destiny as I do." The personnel he can do is that his infinite physical strength can support him. In other words, the lowest wearing version of Shintaro Midorima, who also owns the Klay Thompson stamina, LeBron James tall Stephen Curry, which is super scary. At this moment, Logan is even stronger than the two-dimensional figure of Shintaro Midorima, who is breaking the dimensional wall. Logan has tried 2 steps from the three-point line, at the top of the arc, on both sides of the 45th degree, and 2 bottom corners, and his feeling is all there, can hit. And all the three-pointers also lived up to expectations. Whether it was Angelo Russell's long-range three-pointer in a pull-and-pull state, or a long-range three-point shot forced on Larry Nance Jr.'s body, it all hit. Then there are the three-pointers at each angle of 2.5, 3.5, and 3.5 distance, which are also all shots. Logan now knows why Shintaro Midorima always looks confident in manga. Except in the face of Akaji's Eye of the Emperor, the forced court could not receive the ball. Midorima Shintaro was not afraid of any opponent. Now, like Shintaro Midorima, Logan is beginning to push the limits. Without hesitation, Logan took another half step toward the far end of the three-point line, a total of 4 steps away from the three-point line. This distance has surpassed the historical line of Logan, Portland Blazers superstar Lillard, facing Paul George's defense at an ultra-long distance, directly killing the Oklahoma Thunder with 3 points, directly near the center line. When normal people see this distance, they will wonder if the person who shoots at this distance is crazy. But this principle no longer applies to Angelo Russell, Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. Angelo Russell, Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. have killed the red eye, and the 3 of them are all up to the defense. It's like Logan isn't shooting from outside the three-point line at the moment, he's getting ready to shoot under the basket. At this moment, in the face of this red-eyed defense, even if you are LeBron James, and you are on the basket, facing the deadly defense of Angelo Russell, Ingram and Larry Nance Jr., you may not be able to score. But Logan took an easy cross-step and shook away little Larry Nance first. Angelo Russell was already the first to react and came to block Logan, who had less than 0.3 seconds to spare. This incident, according to the rules of the NBA, if it is the last attack, it is simply not enough to shoot. Because the NBA shot speed is the fastest in the current measurement, Stephen Curry's attack shot speed is 0.4 seconds. But this is Logan, and for Logan, the limit is meant to be broken for him. Stephen Curry should be thankful that this is a normal training tournament and there is nothing that can be used to do technical statistics. Otherwise, his shooting limit record would undoubtedly be broken by Logan. Logan shot wildly on three-pointers in less than 0.2 seconds. And, a beautiful drive pull of the Tracy McGrady style, shooting straight at the basket and shooting three-pointers. Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram didn't look back, and they could already guess the outcome. Sure enough, the result was exactly the same as they expected. Because Logan didn't even look at the basket, he calmly went to the next place. It was a show of extreme confidence after he shot. The sound of splashes rang out and Logan hit a shot near halftime. Facing Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram, Logan did not celebrate, but lightly walked to the next place, wanting to try another angle of shooting efficiency. In fact, Logan did not want to pretend to be forced in front of this group of juniors. Instead, he felt that the 5 minutes that the system had given him experience were almost over, and he only had one last chance to shoot. So he saved time and hurried to experience it one last time. So he also ignored the expressions on the faces of Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram at the moment. At this time, Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram's expressions could only be described by the word fear, one by one, like just seeing Sadako climb out of the ancient well. Especially with their leader at the moment, Angelo Russell. Angelo Russell just feels that it's not as simple as Ray Allen or Stephen Curry. He felt that he was not facing a human being at all, and that human beings could not be so precise. There is only one thing in the world that can be so precise, and that is machinery. Yes, machines equipped with a variety of advanced electronic equipment can be so precise and foolproof. Angelo Russell only felt that he was facing a missile launch system. Yes, only with the help of a missile launch system positioned by space satellites can it be separated by such a long distance and can accurately bombard the other party's basket. It is too terrible, only the missile launch system can cause such a precise strike effect. But we, not missile defense systems, we are human beings. Is it reasonable that a human being is now bombed to the point of exhaustion under the bombardment of missiles? Angelo. Ingram said tremblingly, I feel like we're not playing with humans, we're playing with a Terminator. Ingram's inner thoughts were the same as Angelo Russell's. Yes, this man must be a Terminator in human skin, he is throwing the basketball as a missile system to launch, otherwise how can it be so accurate? In the space overhead, there are satellites positioning, and it is possible to play such a powerful basketball. Hey! Angelo Russell reluctantly calmed down and said, "Where in the world is there a Terminator? Can you please stop saying such sad words? We want to win, we want to win." Episode 117. Want to win, that's what Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram Lakers are thinking at the moment. For the honor of the father. Larry Nance Jr. roared. You know, Larry Nance Jr.'s father, Larry Nance, is a well-known figure in the NBA. Larry Nance was selected by the Phoenix Suns with the 20th pick in the first round of the 1981 NBA draft. During his career, he played for two teams, the Phoenix Suns and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and was selected for the NBA All-Star team 3 times in his career, winning 4 championships in the first NBA dunk contest, becoming the first champion of the NBA dunk competition. He has also been named to the NBA Best Defensive Team First Team once and the NBA Best Defensive Team Second Team twice in his career. To this day, Larry Nance's retired number 22 jersey still flies over the Cleveland Cavaliers gymnasium. Little Larry Nance certainly longed to meet or even surpass his father's honor, but now it seemed like a fool's dream. At the moment, he could only vent this desire on the defense of Logan. For the dignity of the show. Ingram roared. Since being selected by the Los Angeles Lakers, Ingram has been labeled as a parallel goods list, playing very unsatisfactory. This year is recognized as a draft year, the ability of the champion Simmons, enough to squeeze out all other rookies. But other rookies, such as Mark Beasley, Sabonis Jr., Hield, Siakam, etc., have played very well, and it seems that Ingram, the top star, is playing particularly poorly. At this moment, Ingram, do not yet know, in Logan's history line, Siakam followed the Raptors to win the championship a year later, and then won the fastest progressive player award for 2 consecutive years to become an Eastern Conference All-Star starter. Murray and Hield, who have won a large contract of more than 80 million yuan in national currency, have also become the well-deserved starters of their respective teams, and Murray has cooperated with Jokic to reach the Western Conference Finals, known as the new Curry. Sabonis Jr., also inherited his father's good genes, became an all-star level figure. If he had known this, Ingram would have collapsed on the spot. Angelo Russell didn't say anything, he just said lightly, "I just want to win." Angelo Russell faced the same situation as Ingram. Simmons suppressed Ingram to the extent that he was probably not as miserable as Angelo Russell. Karl Anthony Towns overwhelmed everyone and was hailed as the only pearl in the draft. And unlike Simmons, who is not good at three-pointers, Karl Anthony Towns has no shortcomings except for the quality of will, but the problem of will quality stuff is not a matter at all in the NBA, and it is easy to be covered up by top talent. And the flower exploration show Okafor has been shouted at by many people, thinking that the strength is enough to suppress Angelo Russell as the leader. Fortunately, this year's rookie is currently playing only Porzingis. Angelo Russell is not so much pressure, but he really wants to win, want the same treatment as Karl Anthony Towns. Inspired by the will, the Lakers 3 less, the collective outbreak. Whoops. This time, the Lakers were not deceived by Rogan's fake actions, all judged the right direction, and collectively jumped to the highest point. There is no doubt that this is a rare collective outbreak of the Lakers. However, Logan is still calm, with a shallow smile at the corner of his mouth, as if he did not take the collective outbreak of the Lakers 3 or less in his eyes. In fact, this time, because it was the last shot, I don't know if he had the idea of releasing water, which seemed very casual. Theoretically, he should test the power of the zone plus Shintaro Midorima's three-pointer. After all, this is something that is not drawn in the comics. In the manga, Daiki Aomine, Ryota Wakase, and Shinjiro Akashi all explicitly opened the zone, while Atsushi was also preparing to enter the zone at the last moment of the game, but was interrupted by Tetsuya Kuriko. The only person who has not shown the zone state is Shintaro Midorima, who may think that the zone plus the three-pointer of the whole court is too terrible, so terrifying that the author can hardly imagine it. Now, Logan had the opportunity to experience something that even the author felt was terrifying, but Logan did not intend to try, and probably felt that this experience was a little too terrifying for the 3 young people in front of him. The Lakers have broken out to the limit and jumped high enough, and Logan does not have an absolute advantage in the starting height this time. Chance, little Larry Nance, thinks so. His height is 2m01 and with Logan's starting height not being enough, with his height and arm span he should have had a chance to touch the ball. However, the result was desperate, and Larry Nance Jr. still could not touch the ball. Because, when Logan shoots, his arm is completely straight, without a little bending. The cover of Larry Nance Jr., on the other hand, is curved with a little curvature. It was this difference between vertical and curved that immediately created a height difference that kept Larry Nance from scratching the skin. Roar Dang wasn't involved in the attack, he just watched Logan shoot from the ground, because even if he went to defend Rogan, it was of no use to believe. When he saw the ball, Ruordang simply muttered, "Straight arm three-pointer." At the same time, he was thinking, "Oh my god, how many shooting skills has this person who barely shoots three-pointers mastered?" This shooting method is exactly the famous stunt of the roaring heavenly dignity Rasheed Wallace, a straight-arm three-pointer. When Ruordang saw the ball, it was as if he had dreamed back to the time when he returned to the scene of the Chicago Bulls and 5 Tigers fighting the Detroit Pistons 5 Tigers. Chicago Bulls starters: center, Little Shark Eddie Curry, organizational guard Sinridge, shooting guard Ben Gordon, big forward P.J. Brown, small forward Ruordang. After the finals, Detroit Pistons boss Richard Hamilton said, "The hardest thing to deal with is not the Los Angeles Lakers, but the Chicago Bulls in the East." But, time and time again, they succumbed to Rasheed Wallace's seemingly unreasonable straight-arm three-pointer. Straight-arm three-pointers, for outside defense expert Ledang, is a nightmare he never wants to see again, but at this moment, the nightmare has returned. Episode 118, a straight-arm three-pointer, in theory, is a pose that any sports expert would advise students never to imitate. Because this posture is actually very unfavorable to shooting, the normal shooting posture is to use arm charge, wrist power, finger terminal power, to attack the basket, so that the accuracy of attacking the basket is the highest. The straight-arm three-pointer is directly used to force the arm, and then the fingers and wrists are simply used as a prop for power. In this way, the first shot is not enough strength, and the second is that you do not shoot enough power, and your accuracy is of course not enough. Just like the three-point king Stephen Curry often has a decline in physical strength in the second half, once the physical strength drops, your strength is not enough, the strength is not enough, and your shooting rate will naturally follow. Someone once counted Stephen Curry's shooting percentage in the first half alone, and that was really terrible. In Rogan's history line, Houston Rockets superstar James Harden, there is also this reason: in the second half, James Harden's shooting percentage, just like the name of his team, dropped like a rocket fall. The only advantage of this straight-arm three-pointer is that the shot is too fast, and many times, your defensive action has not yet been formed, and the other party has already shot. However, if the opponent's defensive action is formed, this straight-arm three-pointer is dangerous if it is within the opponent's defensive range. Because you can't change direction with your wrists and fingers, it is easy to be changed by the other party. In theory, Rasheed Wallace's three-point shooting percentage should be worse than Walker's fat head. Walker likes to shoot three-pointers, and his three-pointers are in a weird position, all of which are shot with his big ass. As a result, the season with the highest three-point shooting rate of his career, that is, about 33% shooting rate, really makes people laugh off the teeth. However, Rasheed Wallace was able to hit such a shot and shot a high percentage from the first quarter to the last. Any opponent, even a defensive expert like Kobe Bryant, who sees Rasheed Wallace's straight-arm three-pointer, will feel a chill in his back and be afraid of it. There are many things in this world that common sense cannot explain, and Rasheed Wallace's shooting percentage is also one of them. Even if people's balls are no longer reasonable, but people can shoot, you take others, that is no way at all. At this moment, Ruordang on the ground, this experienced veteran, saw that Logan actually used the stunt of a straight-arm three-pointer, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. However, at this moment, Logan slowly landed from the air, suddenly sighed and said, "You have won." At the moment of the shot, Logan suddenly felt that something was wrong. This ball, it would not be scored. But at the moment, it was a bullfight, not a game, and Logan couldn't pass the ball to his teammates or anything. He had to force a shot, but the moment he struck, Logan knew that the ball would never go in. Just like Shintaro Midorima in the manga, he will never shoot a goal if he feels like he can't score. Angelo Russell and Larry Nance Jr. and Ingram couldn't believe that it was Logan comforting them, the ball would still be scored. At this moment, the first sound, the sound of iron, came. Angelo Russell, Ingram and Larry Nance and Jr. began to hear Logan's words, and they couldn't believe it. "Won yourself?" Logan's three-pointer has never missed a hand, and this is what Logan said to comfort himself. It wasn't until the sound of the bang that Angelo Russell, Ingram, and Larry Nance in a little didn't fully react, and it was much later that they fully reacted, and then they exclaimed together. Then Angelo Russell, Ingram and Larry Nance and Jr. hugged each other in celebration, tears streaming down their faces and rolling to the ground. The entire empty stadium was the only one playing at the moment, and after the game was over, the excited cries of these young people sounded. People who don't know think that in the finals that just ended, the three of them joined forces to prevent the final killing of the other party's top superstar Logan. Win. Larry Nance Jr. roared, "I won the bet on my father's reputation." Logan wanted to laugh and calm down, "The person in the comic who often gambled on my grandfather's reputation, but he was not as calm as you." And Ingram also burst into tears and said, "I have finally maintained the dignity of my best-in-class show. Ha ha ha." Logan couldn't help but laugh. The list of eyes has the dignity of hair. You calm down, you are going to become an all-star man in the future, don't be arrogant to yourself. Even the veteran General Luer Deng couldn't help but miss his original glory days when he saw it, and couldn't help but secretly wipe away the tears that kept flowing to his chin. Angelo Russell was calmer and just said, "Oh my god, we actually won, Logan touched his chin and said, "You can go to the nightclub tonight." After all, Rogan's bet is to lose to admit. This is also a kind of encouragement for young people, and occasionally go to the next nightclub is not a big deal, and not often go. "I'm sorry, boss." Only to see Angelo Russell bow to Logan and say, "I'm not going to the nightclub tonight, I want to practice. I hope the boss can accompany me to practice." He was afraid that Logan would not agree, and he quickly added a sentence, "I don't go to the nightclub, but instead go to training, just like let the boss accompany me. The boss never goes to the nightclub," should be agreed. Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. also said that they were also coming to practice together at night. In fact, Logan listened to Angelo Russell's words, which was a big surprise. What, Angelo Russell doesn't go to the nightclub, and he doesn't have to practice with his girlfriend, which is surprising to Logan. Pablo James to hold his thigh. "You're changing your mind, like James Harden in my history line, to be the rhythm of MVP. But the MVP is definitely me, and you can only be the second person in the MVP selection at most. Boss." Angelo Russell whispered, "We all know that the days we play around you are getting shorter and shorter, and we want to take every opportunity to learn more from you." "Huh?" Lua was able to say, "How can this be? We still have a long time to cooperate, and you all have a bright future. The boss doesn't have to lie to us." Angelo Russell said, "We already know that the top brass is going to trade several of us to the New Orleans Daigo in exchange for Anthony Davis." Episode 119. Logan sighed. The youngsters seemed to have known that the team was negotiating with the New Orleans Pelicans to trade thick-browed brother Anthony Davis. After all, after the scandal between brother thick-eyebrow Anthony Davis and the Cleveland Cavaliers, DeMarcus Cousins said that he would stay on the team, and the team with the biggest scandal of brother thick-eyebrow Anthony Davis is the Los Angeles Lakers. Los Angeles is a big city, and thick-eyebrowed Anthony Davis, even if he is a top superstar in the league, is willing to bring his talent to Los Angeles. And in recent years, the league has confirmed that it is not enough to have a superstar, except for Dirk Nowitzki, who was in a state explosion in 2011, no one can single-core lead the team to win the championship. In fact, when Dirk Nowitzki won the championship, many people speculated that it was due to conspiracy theories. After all, in that final series, LeBron James's play is simply unbearable, and what single game only scored 9 points, was invented by LeBron James. If the Miami Heat won that finals, then Dwayne Wade must be an FMVP, then of course he will continue to be the boss of the team and cannot give up the ball, so many people speculate that it is LeBron James who secretly sold the team in order to confirm his core position. Of course, this is just a guess, and there is no basis for it. In fact, even the Chicago Bulls of that year did not rely on the basketball god Michael Jordan alone. They had Michael Jordan, Scott Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. Together, these three men have nearly 30 defensive positions, and as soon as they play, the opponent's score will automatically decrease by 20 points. If this lineup comes today, everyone will shout, "This is cheating, cheating." And the San Antonio Spurs, also early on David Robinson and Tim Duncan, "This is 2 MVPs, 2 MVPs, what is this concept?" Of course, in the Logan history line, James Harden and Russell Westbrook are the deadly double MVP combination of water. The late San Antonio Spurs were not weak at night, with a strong combination of GDP plus Kawhi Leonard. As for what the Los Angeles Lakers OK combination, and what the Miami Heat Big Three, that is not to mention at all. A lot of people feel that these combinations are cheating. The New Orleans Pelicans, also preparing to start rebuilding, are really interested in the young talents of the Los Angeles Lakers, such as D'Angelo Russell, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram. After all, their main core defender, Jrue Holiday, is only 27 years old, just in his prime, just enough to take this group of young people with him. At that time, as long as Angelo Russell and Ingram are brought out, they can be exchanged for players of the same level as Anthony Davis. Unfortunately, Luer Deng's contract still can't be sent, David Lee is also injured, and the New Orleans Pelicans are willing to eat one of them at most. It seems that Luer Deng still has some trade value. This means that the 4 people currently fighting against Logan may be at the trading center with thick eyebrows Anthony Davis, and all of them will leave the team. Thinking of this, D'Angelo Russell was a little frustrated. They had grown up around Logan, but now they were forced to leave Logan to make a living for themselves. "Huh?" Logan said angrily, "We are a team with 20 consecutive wins. If you want, you don't need any thick eyebrows Anthony Davis, we can win the championship together, boss." Angelo Russell blinked and said, "A team has 3 defenders and 2 chart tops, isn't it too crowded?" Logan was dumbfounded. Yes, even if he was willing to take these young men to battle, Angelo Russell and Ingram would have to walk away from each other if they were in overlapping positions. After all, the goal of young people cannot be to win the championship with themselves, everyone still has to pursue the top salary. After the team has offered itself a top salary, it is certainly impossible to give D'Angelo Russell and Ingram a top salary, and the two must go away. And the person who stays behind may not be able to get the maximum salary. That being the case, it is better to let them all fly to other teams and let them all get the top salary, and it is more reasonable for the Los Angeles Lakers to leave the maximum salary to Logan and thick eyebrow brother Anthony Davis. "It's okay, boss." Larry Nance Jr. grinned widely. "We study one more day around you is one day, and we feel that staying by your side for one more day is more effective than playing 10,000 years in the league. Don't make a fool of yourself." Logan smiled and said, "Still studying the next game, we're going to face the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is the defending champion." By this time, D'Angelo Russell, Ingram, and Larry Nance Jr. had begun to discuss how to deal with the Cleveland Knights. At the same time, Logan was still wondering why he couldn't shoot the last three-pointer, and as soon as he made a shot, he felt like he couldn't hit. He didn't think about the Cleveland Cavaliers at all, which was perfunctory to Angelo Russell, Ingram, and Larry Nance Jr. Logan's mind was like a calculator, constantly thinking about what the last ball was all about. The experience time of the Shintaro system in the bright green has not yet arrived, and his sensitivity to time is very high, and it is impossible to say that he accidentally gave time out. Is there a bug in the system? This is a big deal. At this time, Logan accidentally looked behind him and lost his smile. It turned out that the answer was so simple. No wonder, the foolproof self will also lose its hand. It turned out that when he finally shot that ball, due to the explosion of confidence, he retreated a little farther and accidentally stepped on the middle line. Shintaro Midorima's system only guarantees that he can shoot three-pointers in any range of the half, but he does not say that he can shoot three-pointers in the whole field. Stepping on the middle line, it is obvious that it is already the full field range, which is beyond the control of the Midorima Shintaro system. This simple reason is the reason why Logan did not shoot in the end. It feels like participating in a science show. You think of hundreds of strange reasons, and in the end, you suddenly find that the answer is so simple. Seeing this reason that he didn't think of at all, Logan couldn't help but laugh and think about Providence. This can really only be said to be Providence. Episode 120. A day later, the Los Angeles Lakers faced off against the mighty defending champion Cleveland Cavaliers at Staples Arena at home. This game instantly aroused the attention of all the media in M Country. Not only that, but there are also big moves on the Dragon Country, and this game is broadcast nationwide. After all, after the little giant Yao Ming retired and Yi Jianlian returned to China, it has been a long time since the Dragon Kingdom superstar can support the field in the NBA. You say the big devil Zhou Qi? He's not Polish. This dragon and tiger fight, but it is a major play in the league. You know, the Los Angeles Lakers are currently 20 consecutive wins, and they are all clocked in and out of work in the third quarter, which can be described as unstoppable. In the eyes of the media, they are more relaxed than the Golden State Warriors, who won 24 consecutive victories last year. After all, the Golden State Warriors arrived at this time last year, and they were already tired of the division, and many games were won by rolling belts. And the Los Angeles Lakers often win easily. The team's main player Logan often clocked in the third quarter. However, the opponent Cleveland Cavaliers, not a fuel-saving lamp, what they are best at is to reverse and create miracles. Last year, in the playoffs in the East, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love each suffered injuries and missed several games. Everyone even thinks that LeBron James may not even be able to get through the East. As a result, LeBron James exploded with 40 points and 50 points per game, easily reaching the finals. In the finals, of course, everyone was unanimously optimistic about the Golden State Warriors, who just set a league record of 73 wins, and no one was optimistic about the Cleveland Cavaliers. With the Cleveland Cavaliers trailing 3-1, not half a man is optimistic about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Even many reporters have written a press release that LeBron James led the team to win the overall runner-up. As a result, LeBron James took the Cleveland Cavaliers to create a miracle and overturned the Golden State Warriors, which is the only time in the history of the league that a team has won 1-3. At this moment, Dragon Kingdom and ESPN Channel also invited super heavyweight guests to explain these two games in a row. The commentary guest of the Dragon Kingdom is the senior commentator Jean Lilly of the Dragon Country, and the special guest is actually the Chicago Bulls superstar Scott Pippen. As we all know, after Scott Pippen retired from the military, due to profligacy and poor financial management, he became poor and deadly, and Michael Jordan, who was good at business, was a world of difference. In order to solve the financial dilemma, Scott Pipper, who has been retired for many years, has returned to play in the Polish league. In order to solve the dilemma, Scott Pippen also once asked Michael Jordan for financial support. At this moment, Dragon Kingdom hired Scott Pippen to come to explain, and of course Scott Pippen flew like a fly. Scott Pippen, who was in a suit and leather, smiled politely at Jean Lizzie, cleared his throat, and was ready to start explaining. He has to behave well and strive to become the resident commentator of the Dragon Kingdom. After all, there is nothing that a stack of banknotes cannot solve, and if not, it will be 2 stacks. And Epson Sports Channel commentary also invited guests of the super heavy level. They are the league's 2 most famous big mouths, Big Shark, Shaq O'Neal, and Flying Pig, Charles Buckley. The ESPN channel is clearly doing things. If it weren't for the sake of doing things, they wouldn't have deliberately arranged for Shaq O'Neal and Charles Barkley to come together to explain the game. Because these 2 people are famous for their big mouths, and these 2 people have always been contradictory. Charles Barkley and Shaq O'Neal, but they played directly in the game, they are not stars of the next generation. Even though Charles Barkley played as a big forward and Shaq O'Neal played as a center, the opposition between them was not small. Naturally, Charles Barkley uses his accurate mid-range shots and 3-pointers to hit Shaq O'Neal and will not go head-to-head with Shaq O'Neal. Shaq O'Neal's inaccurate free throws and inability to shoot 3-pointers were taunted by Charles Barkley. And Shaq O'Neal also did not dare to show weakness, mocking Charles Barkley will only play some defenders who are weaker than himself on the back, facing the top big forwards never dare to single, there is the ability you to back singles me to see, I will play you retired. The 2 often fight each other in the air, and Charles Barkley mocks Shaq O'Neal, a center who can't respond, can't make a free throw, can't shoot 3-pointers, and has no food at all in this fast-moving death 5-hour era. Shaq O'Neal mocked Charles Buckley, a veritable super deserter who retired after the league introduced the 5-second rule of backing himself and looked at his own disadvantage. Shaq O'Neal mocked Charles Barkley for not even having a championship ring, not being a top star. Charles Buckley, in turn, ridiculed Shaq O'Neal for having only 1 MVP, and although he only had 1 MVP, his own MVP led the Phoenix Suns to 62 wins, overpowering the basketball god Michael Jordan. Shaq O'Neal ridiculed Charles Barkley for not winning a championship with the Houston Rockets in his old age, and he has always been the team's backbone and thigh. Charles Barkley also said unceremoniously that Shaq O'Neal was beaten by the Houston Rockets of Big Dream Hakeem Olajuwon and glider Claude Drexler's Houston Rockets in the finals, and if he had held this rocket at his peak, O'Neal would have been crowned for life. Anyway, they are just a war of words, as long as you agree with the point of view, the other side is all opposed. Every time these 2 people met, it was always the same thrill as Mars hitting Earth. Interestingly, the 2 really did not mean it, as long as one side agrees with the point of view, the other party does not have to deliberately oppose, it is from the heart of the opposition. For example, in terms of the team's side. Big Shark Shaq O'Neal is of course partial to the Los Angeles Lakers, the parent team he is famous for, and he is full of praise for the Los Angeles Lakers superstar Logan, and there is absolutely no incompatibility with Eastern culture. And Flying Pig Charles Buckley everyone knows, because of the feud with the Dragon Country player Aomine, forced to kiss the ass of the donkey. So Flying Pig Charles Barkley, against the players of the Dragon Kingdom, that is extra harsh. As soon as he came up, he threw out a sentence and said, I see the Los Angeles Lakers' 20-game winning streak, and today is definitely coming to an end.